Hi, this is Jason from Effective Dashboards, helping maintenance and reliability professionals get the most out of Power BI. So welcome back to another video. In this video, we're going to be looking at how you can use Power BI metrics to add commentary to your Power BI reports. So we're going to be looking at how you can pull the information that you've entered into metrics, and in particular, these notes here, which are commentary related to a check-in, which is related to a date and a value, into a Power BI report and use it as additional commentary that's going to supplement particular data points. For example, in this column chart, we've got a tooltip here that explains why the value is high or above a threshold on a particular date. Okay, so before we get started, let's look at the big picture here, and I'll talk you through the different elements and how the data is going to be moved around. So first of all, we've got a Power BI report here, and it's got a data set on it that is basically pulling together production loss information. Then we're going to go and we're going to create a metric, and the metric is actually going to pull its target and actual values automatically from this report here. Okay, so we're going to publish that to the service, the original report, and we're going to use the metric to go and actually pull that information in, and that's going to be used in the metric to set the status and to provide a bit of history for that particular KPI. The next thing we're going to do, and like I mentioned, in the metric you can actually store and input information. Now in Power BI reports you can't really input information. You can use Power Apps or you can use other mechanisms, but within the metric you can actually input commentary, and that commentary is going to be really useful for us if we can get access to it back in the original Power BI report to supplement any highs or any lows or any points of interest with some commentary, so that when somebody's reading that report, they've got some information to put a bit of context around particular values. So what we're going to do is, once the information's been entered into the metric, we're then going to use this scorecard data set. So every scorecard that's generated has got a data set that sits underneath it to provide it to store the data. We're then going to pull that into this Power BI report here, and then we're going to have access to all the information that's stored in the metric, and that's going to include the notes. Now once we've got access to these notes, we can then use them to generate a tooltip and to provide that information that's really useful for someone looking at that Power BI report. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is create a new Power BI report, or you can use an existing one. I've created a new one here, Unplanned Losses V2, and this is a trend of the unplanned production losses, but it could be any trend, over time, and we've got a threshold here as well on this particular visual. And the underlying data here is stored in Excel, which is on a SharePoint Online site, a folder. So I'm going to publish that up to the Power BI service. Okay, so that's now in the Power BI service. Now the reason we need to have it in the service is obviously if you want to share it with people, but we're also going to use that as a connection or a data source when we connect it to a metric. So the next thing we need to do is add a metric to a scorecard. So I'm in here, and this is metrics within Power BI. Now if you want to know more about that, I'll leave a link to the videos below. We're going to look at it today, but I'm not going to go into it in too much detail and really just focus in on covering the elements of metrics that are related to this particular video. So I've created a scorecard here, and it doesn't have a metric, but I'm going to go and create one. So it's going to be called Unplanned Losses. Okay, we're going to leave the owner as myself. Now the current value is where we're going to go and link through, connect to data, and we're going to link through to all reports, and we're going to go and look for this one here that I've published up to the Power BI service. Okay, we know it's V2, this is V1, this is V2 here. And we're going to go next. And it's so simple just to connect to these data sources. We're going to click on here. Okay, now it's going to give us an option to choose the measure. So unplanned losses BBLS is the measure we're going to use. And we want to track all the data in this time series. We want to pull all of these data points into our metric and just connect. Okay, now for the target, we're going to go to do the same again. Click on the visual. Now this time we're going to select the other measure here, which is the weekly threshold. And we're going to track the time series because we can see it changes over time, and we're just going to connect to that. Okay, so these are locked in, and we've got the current value, and we've got the next milestone there. So then we're going to create a rule, and the rule is going to be used to set the status of this particular metric against the underlying data that's in that that data set there. So value is greater than, and we'll just change that to percentage. So if it's greater than 100% of the target, then it's over threshold. Otherwise, it's below threshold. So we'll keep it nice and simple, and we'll save that. Okay, so we've now got our metrics here, and we can see there's a little message come through from into Teams there. So I'm going to go and add a note in here, because we're going to use that later on. So we can see here we've got on the 3rd of the 10th, the production losses were particularly high. So let's add a new check-in for that date there. So we can go in here and we can choose the 3rd of the 10th and we can add a note. Okay, so you can put in anything you want. I'm just going to save that and we can see we've now got a note here. Now I'm actually going to add another note because I want to show you the fact that you can have multiple notes on the same day. Now you can only have one check-in per day. Okay, so here's the check-in for the 3rd of October, and here's the value of that check-in, which is rounded up to 2k basically. So let's add another note. Okay, so we've got another note there. So we've got 2 notes against this particular date here, and they can be seen here. You can see there's a little bit of an indication here. So we're back in Power BI, and I'm going to add in a metric visual here. Now, this metric visual needs to be enabled in the preview features. So we go to File, Options and Settings, Options, Preview Features, and Metric Visual. So as of this date here, which is sometime in November 2022, you need to enable this. So it's not mandatory to add this visual in, but I'm going to add it in anyway because then it allows you to get easy access to the metric if you want to add additional notes. So we're going to add in a metric as a list. We're going to go and browse metrics. And I'm going to choose this scorecard here, losses scorecard. Okay, so it's going to pull that metric into here, and then we will, or this scorecard actually, it's only got one metric in it, but it's going to pull the whole scorecard in. And we can see here that that has been entered into there. Now this, like I mentioned, is not mandatory, but it just lets you be able to click through into this metric from within the actual Power BI report once it's published up to the service. So let's go back to our main page now. Okay, so now we're going to go and add in the metric data source into our PBIX file. So we're going to go to Get Data, and we're going to go to Power BI Datasets, and we can see here we've got a list of different data sets, and we're going to go for the losses scorecard, and we're going to connect to that. We're just going to select all of the tables. So this is the table structure. Okay, so now we've got the goals, the notes, the scorecard, the status, the value. So all of that information is now, or all of these tables and the related information for that particular scorecard and the metrics in that scorecard are now available to us in this Power BI report. Okay, so the next step is to update the data model, and we're going to create a relationship between the date table here and the timestamp. Okay, so we'll build a relationship between these two here. So we've got a relationship between the values timestamp and the date in the date table. Okay, so there's a one-to-one relationship. You can only get one value on one date, so that's great, and we've got a list of unique dates in the date table. And then you can see here, we've already got this relationship here, a one-to-many relationship between the value and the associated notes. And we're going to use this information in these 3 tables here to associate those notes with a value on our column chart. So next we're going to add a table, and we're just going to use this table. It's not mandatory by any means, but it's just there to allow us to see the information as we build up the different measures. Okay, so here's the table here. We've got the date, and that's from the date table. We've got the name, which has come from the goal, and we've got the value that's come from the values down here, and we've got the body of the note that's come from the notes table. We can see we've got our 2 notes that we added in here. Okay, so next we're going to add some measures. Now the first measure we've got to add is a measure that's going to create one entry for one date for all of the notes on that particular date. Okay, so we're going to use concatenate X, and it's going to concatenate the values for each day into a single measure. So we're going to start by defining a table, which is a notes table. The expression is simply just going to be the body of the particular notes, and the delimiter is going to be this unichar brackets 10, which is a carriage return basically. So every note is going to be put onto a new line. The next argument is going to be the ordered expression, so we're going to order it by the value timestamp, and we're going to order it ascending. Okay, so that's going to go and create the first measure that we need, which is going to pool all of the notes for a particular value on a particular day into one field. So let's add that into our table, get rid of the body, and we'll pull this one in instead. Okay, so now we've got this summary of notes on a particular date, and let's just sort this descending, and we can see that on this, the 3rd of October, we can now see that the notes are all in one field here. Let's tidy up the subtotals here, we don't need the totals. Okay, so next we're going to go and create measures for the value and for the target. These are straightforward measures, just using a sum of the value column and the target column. Okay, metric value equals sum of values value. A metric target is sum of values target. Next, we're going to produce the measure for the value versus target delta. So that's just going to be the metric value minus the metric target. Okay, so let's pull these in so we can see that information there. I'm just going to get rid of these decimal places as well. So each value, which is related to a specific date, has got a status. So let's pull the status color in here. Or sorry, let's pull the display name in here. Okay, we can see below and over threshold. Now we're going to put some conditional formatting into this, and we're also going to use it on the tooltip. So we're going to add some conditional formatting here, and that is going to be used in our tooltip to indicate if it's above or below the threshold, and it's going to take that color that's on the actual the status indicator in the metric, and it's going to use that same color. Now to do that, we've got a couple of things. We've got the status, and in this status table we've got the color, and there is a status ID here as well, which is the connection through to this status here. So if we look at the relationship, we can see that we've got a relationship here between the ID of the status in the status table and the status in the values, and that's going to be a number there. So we're going to use that information to go and get the color for each one of these values here. So let's go and we'll add a couple of things in. We're going to first of all add in the status into here, just so we can get the numbers that we're interested in. So we can see that over threshold is 4 and below threshold is 1, so that's fine. Okay, so we've got here, whichever is true, selected value. If it's equal to 1, then we're going to use the color. And if it's equal to 4, we're going to use a color. For anything else, we're just going to leave it blank. So to apply the conditional formatting, we go to the display name. And then we go to conditional formatting, background color, field value, and select this measure that we created there. Conditional formatting, metric status. Now the smart thing about this is that if we do change the color that's assigned to each one of these different status codes in the metric scorecard, then this is going to get updated because it'll be a new color that's actually pulled through here, and this will get updated, so it's all going to be linked together. So next we're going to start to add the tooltip. So I am going to add a new page. We'll call it metric notes. We'll go to page information, and we'll make sure that this is allow use as tooltip. And it's already given us the, as soon as we click this button here, it's going to change it to be the default size for the tooltip. Now I'm just going to keep it there. You can actually go and change that if you need to. So let's go and add in some information here. Okay, we'll start with the header here, status summary. And then we're going to add the measure that we created that consolidates all of the notes for a particular date into one field. Now, the visual that we're going to add that into is actually going to be a button. So let's insert a button. And we'll use a blank button here. I find that a button at the moment just gives us a little bit more flexibility in terms of formatting the data. So let's go and click on here, and then we're going to go to the style, and we're going to go to text, and we're going to switch this on. And then in this FX area here is where we're going to actually pull in a field value, and that is going to be the summary text. Okay, so that's because we've only got one summary text, it's going to pull that in. Now don't be alarmed if it's looking like it's the wrong text in here, because there's no date context here. So it's just going to click, this is going to show the first one. Now let's just play with this a little bit. So we're going to use this to stick it over to the left. We'll stick it in the middle there. I'm going to get rid of the border. I'm going to change the color here to be the same color that we use on the chart. In fact, I'm just going to make it a line to the top there. Okay, it's giving us plenty of space. Now, I'll make it a little bit bigger so that we've got a little bit of space if there's more than this amount of text in here. The next thing I want to do is I want to put a little message at the bottom here that tells us the current value, the target, and the difference. Okay, I think it's going to be useful if you can hover above it and see that information. Okay, so here's a string here that we're going to generate. It's going to be A, and then it's going to be formatted value just to make sure that we've got this, or the metric value, make sure we've got the thousands in there. Then we're going to separate it with one of these bars here, then the target, then the difference. So it's really straightforward. And then we're going to go and add a button here, and we're going to go into the button, and we're going to go to style, and we're going to format the text using that information there. Sum of the value versus target. And here we can see it is there. Okay, so obviously that hasn't got a date context, so it's not going to make much sense just now, but we can see it's actually working. Right, that's looking good. Now finally, we're going to add a shape, and we're going to use a little bit of a color here for the conditional format measure we're going to use to color a shape, and that's going to indicate if it's over or under. So let's go to Insert, Shape, and I'm going to use a pill. Now it's absolutely massive just now, so let's just resize that. Line it up here, and we're going to go and use the conditional formatting to go and determine the color of this. So let's go into Shape, Style, and then we'll go to the FX button here. We're going to go to Field Value, we'll find a conditional formatting metric, and then we're going to get rid of the border. So that's just got our tooltip. The next thing we need to do is go back and add that in to the chart. Okay, so we're going to go to Format, we're going to go to General, and we're going to go to Tooltips, and we're going to select Report Page as a type, and then we're going to go and add this one in as our tooltip. Right, so let's see if it's working here. Okay, so that tooltip's popping up, and we can see a little bit of a conditional formatting. There's no notes for this one, but we know that there's notes here. And here we can see the notes and the conditional formatting. So that is us almost done. Now we can go one step further, and what I want to do is I want to add a little subtle indicator when there are notes related to a data point. So let's go and do that. So if you think about what we want to do with this measure, we want to only show a number, or only show we're going to create a line basically, and we're only going to show a data point whenever there are some notes related to that data point. So the measure we're going to use is value if date has notes, is basically what we're going to use. So first of all, we're going to count the number of rows in the notes table, and that's going to be in the context of each one of these data points. Okay, because we've got a relationship between, a one-to-many relationship between the values table and the notes table, it's going to be able to count how many notes, how many entries there are in that table for that particular data point. Now, if the number is greater than 0, we know there's a note, at least one, then we're going to display the metric value. Okay, and that's going to give us the ability to plot a value on each one of these data points for instances where there are notes. And if not, it's just going to return the default of an if statement, which is blank. So I'm going to add this in as on the line, another line. Okay, so we can see here there's a couple of bits and pieces we need to change. The first one is we've got this series label here, so let's get rid of that. Okay, so that's off. Now the next thing I need to do is I need to make sure, well, we can see straight away there's a little subtle point there, but we've got a double up on the data label, so let's switch the data label off as well. Okay, and the second thing or the final thing I need to do is to make sure that if we've only got one entry with some notes on it, and if we did have other entries, that we'd try to draw a line between them. So let's go and switch off the line. So let's go to lines. We're going to select if value of data has notes, and we're going to go and change the stroke width to 0. Okay, so we can actually then go and play about with this actual indicator here. So let's go to markers, and we'll switch on the markers. Okay, and just make sure this one's off. Yeah, that one's off. So that one's on by default, and that's why we can see that there. Now we can make it a different color if we want. Let's see if we can choose it to be this color here. Okay, so you can play about with that, and you can see that it's only going to indicate the points where we've actually got some notes and some points of interest that we can go and have a look at. Okay, so we've now got our notes information that's been entered into our metric available to us in our Power BI file. So next we're going to go and add some additional notes and see how they propagate through into this report here. Okay, so we're back in the Power BI service, and we can see that we've got the little indicator there and the information there that's been pulled through from, or the notes that's been pulled through from the check-in on that particular date. So the next thing I'm going to do is add a new check-in. So let's go on to the next tab here. Now this is where we embedded the scorecard, which has only really got one metric in it. So let's go and add some notes from within here. So it's a little bit cramped in here, but let's go and find a date. So here's one here, the 27th of the 6th. So let's go and stick in a note on the 27th of the 6th. So we're going to add a check-in. We're going to click the 27th of the 6th, and we're going to go into a note here and add some notes in here. Okay, I'm going to save that. And then I'm actually going to add a second note into that date as well. So let's go back in here, and we're going to add a note, and then we'll save that. Okay, so we've now got on the 27th of June, we've got another couple of notes that we've added in. So let's close that down. We can see that we've got the 4 notes there. Now, if we go back into this report here, we can see that it's not available at the as a new one here. So let's refresh that. Okay, and it's still not available, but it's got a direct connection to the metric. So why is that? Well, it turns out that, as far as I know anyway, and with a little bit of testing here, the underlying data set for the metric still needs to be refreshed. Okay, so you need to put that on a schedule refresh, or you could create some sort of Power Automate flow that actually triggers that refresh whenever you when you press a button from within the Power BI file. In fact, that might well be a video that I create later on. But anyway, for now, let's refresh this loss scorecard dataset. Okay, so I've just refreshed this button here. Now, because there is a direct connection between this Power BI report here and the data set for the metrics, then it does appear automatically and there's no need to refresh it. So we can see we've got this note here coming in, and here's a tooltip, main power generation failure tooltip. Okay, so hopefully you found this useful. Some really handy functionality. You could bring other things in like the KPI owner and other bits and pieces of information that's available within metrics. It's not just limited to notes, although notes is a really useful bit of information that you can pull in here. If you found this useful, then always welcome if you can give it a thumbs up and always appreciated. And if you want to keep up to date with the latest videos, I tend to release one every day, then hit the subscribe button. Thanks again for watching, and I'll talk to you in the next video.